I'm excited to have this conversation with you. A few months ago, I heard an interview with Frank Borman, who was the commander of the Apollo 8 mission. Apollo 8 was the first space mission to leave low Earth orbit, enter into orbit around the moon, and then return to Earth. And the 3 astronauts were the first astronauts to ever have been that far from Earth. They were the first 3 human beings to see the dark side of the moon. In fact, the picture that we're using for this series right here was taken on that mission. Up until this point, no one had seen Earth from that perspective. It was groundbreaking, monumental. It was a huge mission. It was a moonshot. It changed the game. I don't know about you, but I expect a certain type of person and motivation to kind of be in an astronaut, right? I just have some preconceptions about what that is. And so, this interview with Frank Borman was so interesting to me. And they asked him, like, why join the space program, Frank? Why go to the moon? You know, did you look through a telescope as a young boy and just kind of dream of what's out there? No. Well, were you fascinated by space and the final frontier, the great unknown? Not particularly. Did you have a desire to blaze a trail, to go into things that were unknown and make them known? No, not at all. Since you've returned to Earth and he's aged and he's in the final stages of his life, do you have a desire to go back even just one more time? Nope, not at all. So why? Why take this moonshot, Frank? Why risk your life? Why do it? And Frank's answer was so simple, and it just caught me off guard. He said, I did it to beat the Russians. We were in the middle of a space race. We were in the middle of the Cold War. Communism versus democracy. I did it to beat the Russians. There was no way that Frank could live in a world where there was a flag of the Soviet Union on the moon for the first time. This was too important for the USA. It was too important for the Cold War. It was too important for the world. And so when JFK said, we choose to go to the moon, Frank finished it with, we choose to go to the moon to beat the Russians. That fascinates me. It cracks me up. Frank doesn't even like space movies. His favorite movie is Casablanca. And he doesn't even like it for all of the normal reasons that people like Casablanca. He likes it. He says it's romantic because the main character chooses the mission over love. There's just something so different about him. It fascinated me. But he does it. He does it for the love of country. And he takes a moonshot. And without his moonshot, we would have never seen Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin land on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. And last week we were all hanging out and watching the Hidden Figures movie. And I tweeted out that no one moonshots alone. And it's so true. Because moonshots are too crazy. They're too big to be done alone. You might be able to get 10% better by yourself. You can do 10% better on your diet by yourself, but you can't get 10 times better by yourself. And Hidden Figures gave me a little bit of insight into a different part of the team that was integral to the space missions. Black, female, genius mathematicians. And unfortunately, and a bit shamefully, I didn't know that story until I watched the movie for the first time. And I think one of the things that I find so fascinating about that is the beauty of moonshots is that when you take a moonshot, there's often unintended consequences where there's breakthrough and progress that's achieved in other areas. For instance, NASA working together as an integrated team in a time that it was unheard of to do that. Because moonshots take a team of people committed together committed to doing it differently. Not just incremental improvements, seismic shifts. One of the things I think about often is, I wonder what would happen within United States culture if we made a commitment like in the next decade we're going to go to Mars. You know what I mean? Because that was a driving force at the time in the 60s. Moonshots have unintended consequences that drive us forward. And so on the same team, you have a person like Frank Borman, who just wants to beat the Russians. And you have Katherine Johnson, who wants equality and respect and dignity. And you have Neil Armstrong, who dreams of space. All coming together for this common mission. You can't moonshot alone in your own life. I think there are moonshots that we all are supposed to take in our own life. One of the ways that I talk about it a lot is to jump off a cliff, leaps of faith. I think part of following and seeking God is that He takes you on ever higher leaps of faith, ever bigger moonshots. And there's times when you first begin to follow Jesus where it's like, I don't know how this is ever going to get done. God, I don't know how I could quit that. And it seems like such a moonshot. And then it happens. And then over time you look back and you go, well, that's easy compared to what God's asking me to do now. You know? I think you have a moonshot that you're looking for in your own life. For some of us, it's to be free from addiction. And that seems absolutely crazy. How could it ever happen? For some of us, it means having a healthy marriage. In the midst of uncertain chaos right now, you're looking at it going, I don't know if that could ever get to the point where I go, man, I'm satisfied and whole within this relationship. For some of us, it's about raising healthy kids or having enough finances to not worry every month, but be generous. I mean, whatever your moonshot is, for some of you, you're contemplating a new career. You just go, I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if I could do it. Whatever you're contemplating in your own life, the moonshot that you're about to take, I want to encourage you, you can't do it alone. Moonshots can't be done alone. They take a team of people. That's the beauty of a community like this, a church, is that we are together to encourage you in your moonshot. To say, you can do it, and we want to help. And to tell you, hey, that's never going to work. You got to try a different way. And at the same time say, keep going. As Sought Church, we can't moonshot alone. As we look to the next 4 years of Sought Church, not just becoming 10% better, but being 10 times better, 10 times different. We can't moonshot alone. There's no one person, there's no one trick, there's no one flip to switch to flip. There's not one thing. It's going to take all of us together for a common cause, working for the life of downtown Las Vegas. God is a God of moonshots, and it shows up throughout the Bible. And tonight I want to look at the story of Moses and the Israelites as they make their way out of Egypt and head into the Promised Land. And so if you have a Bible, you can turn to Exodus chapter 36 tonight. And it's eventually where we're going to get in this story. Exodus is the story of just that, the Exodus. It is the story of the nation of Israel leaving Egypt, coming out of slavery, and trying to make their way into the Promised Land. It's found in the Old Testament. It's the second book of the Bible and shared with the Hebrew Scripture. And so we'll have the Scripture here on the screen. You can also download a Bible.com/app to your phone. If you don't have a Bible, we've got one out for you because we believe it's important for us to consider it together. As you look at the journey of the Israelites, the idea of the Israelites making it to the Promised Land and being their own nation is a moonshot. When the Israelites first went into the land of Egypt, they were pretty much a large extended family. Everybody knew each other. They all camped together. They all hung out together. They all looked out for one another. And they ended up in Egypt because of a famine. And, of course, there was Joseph there. And if you don't know that part of the Bible, you just read Exodus and you'll see it. And so they basically come in as a large family. Over time, though, over the course of hundreds of years, what happens is the large family begins to grow and grow and grow and turns into a nation. But they're no longer the same as when they came in. Not everybody knows each other. Now it's 12 wholly separate but together kind of tribes. Too big to know one another, too big to rely on one another in a meaningful way as when they first came in. Now the generation that has grown up in Egypt knows nothing of the life that their ancestors lived before. All they know is slavery. And so Moses comes along and he says to Pharaoh, you got to let everybody go because God said so. And there's a showdown between Pharaoh and God. And eventually what happens is God wins and they come out of that and they begin to make this journey. But I want you to understand, it's not just a journey from Egypt to the Promised Land geography. It certainly is. It's also the journey from slaves in Egypt to an established nation in the Promised Land, which is much more difficult. Because you have to change habits and attitudes and mindsets. You have to change generational ways of thinking. And so the thought that this nation of slaves is somehow going to make it through a bunch of nations that despise them and want to see them destroyed and somehow come together under combined leadership to take their place in the Promised Land is an absolute moonshot. We take it for granted now because it happened, but I think that's so often why when you read the story, you end up with the Israelites. The first time it happens, they get to the edge of the Red Sea. And they're stuck between rocks and a sea. And they just go, we give up. We would rather die in Egypt. You understand the difficulty in it. It was even hard for them to see. You have to take a nation who, yes, knew about God, but had grown up in a culture where Pharaoh was God, a God among many gods. You have to move them from existing in a pluralistic culture to this one nation devoted to the worship of God. Man, they have a hard time with that. Because as soon as they get out of Egypt, it goes all right for a while. And then Moses goes and he meets with God. And while Moses is gone, they go, hey, we got an idea. Let's make us a god. And so you end up with a golden calf in the middle of the desert. Just an absolute moonshot. And so in the course of this journey, when they finally arrive at Mount Sinai, Moses is meeting with God. He's receiving the 10 Commandments. Down below, they're making the golden calf. Moses comes down because God's angry. He says they're doing something dumb. He breaks the 10 Commandments. He goes through the whole... Then in the middle of this story, all of a sudden you get the instructions for the tabernacle. And the tabernacle would be the place where this nation would come together to worship God. And God says, basically, I want you and I need you to build a tabernacle so that I can dwell among you. If we're going to do this, guys, I'm going to have to dwell among you. And so that's exactly what they did. They received the instructions to build the tabernacle, and what would happen is they would set up the entire camp around the tabernacle, with the tabernacle in the center and all of the nations camped, or all of the tribes of the nation camped around it, and God dwelt among them in that place. If we're going to make this moonshot from slaves to independent nation, to worshiping God alone, I'm going to have to dwell among you. And so comes from, there's a whole line of instructions. And then this is what pops up in Exodus 36. The Lord has gifted Bezalel, Oholiab, don't know if I'm saying it right. Just skip over those names. Just kind of mumble over them when you're reading to yourself. Nobody will know the difference. And the other skilled craftsmen with wisdom and ability to perform any task involved in building the sanctuary. Let them construct and furnish the tabernacle just as the Lord has commanded. And so Moses summoned Bezalel and Oholiab and all the others who were specially gifted by the Lord and were eager to get to work. Moses gave them the materials donated by the people of Israel as sacred offerings for the completion of the sanctuary. But the people continued to bring additional offerings each morning. And finally, the craftsmen who were working on the sanctuary left their work and they went to Moses and reported, "The people have given more than enough materials to complete the job the Lord has commanded us to do." And so Moses gave the command, and this message was sent throughout the camp. "Men and women, don't prepare any more gifts for the sanctuary. We have enough." So the people stopped. Yeah, that's right. So the people stopped bringing their sacred offerings. Their contributions were more than enough to complete the whole project. I love this story. I don't know if you've ever tried to herd people together to accomplish anything. Whether it's, a school fundraiser, a fundraiser thing at your work, whether you've been involved with a church before. I don't know of any fundraiser, any church, anything that's tried to do anything where they've announced halfway through, "That's all right, we met the goal, we have enough." I've never seen it. I love this. We have enough, more than enough. I love the way this team comes together to accomplish the MoonShot that is going to be taking place. And I just want to point out a couple of things. The first thing is that God uses the gifts of these craftsmen. He says there are people who are qualified to do the work, and what I'm going to do is I am going to put my Spirit on them and anoint them and see them accomplish it in amazing ways. I'm going to give them wisdom and ability to perform the task. I want you to know that you have gifts. You have talents. You have things that God is saying to you for the MoonShot that you want to take in your life, for the MoonShot that we want to take as Sought Church. You have gifts, and God wants to put His Spirit on you so that He can increase your ability and increase your wisdom to see a team come together to accomplish something that doesn't look like it could or should be done. I love that it uses something that's so real. I think so often when we consider faith and following God, it becomes so disembodied from who we are that we forget that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that through that, God wants to see His kingdom come and His will be done through what He's doing in you and through you. So, I want to tell you about something that we want to do, and that I believe that God has brought someone and will continue to bring someones, and we'll all work together to accomplish something that we have not yet done before, and take a MoonShot. And that is, we are in the process of completing a separate 501c3, a separate nonprofit organization that will be focused on community outreach and community organization. Right now we're calling it Good Works. Good Works. And we want to focus on creativity, calling, and common good. We want to see people use their creativity and the artistic community use their creativity to come together to see us all embrace the callings that God has put in our own life and not do that just for our own benefit, but for common good. And I know that might seem like, well, doesn't that happen by default? I don't know. I don't know that it does. Right now I'm picking up some shifts at Amazon, and I have to remind myself sometimes I'm doing this Not just to get a paycheck. I'm doing this, so that people can have Christmas gifts. There's a common good to it. You have to find the connection to it. I was reading an article recently about the campfire. My mom is in Chico, California, so she's right in the midst of it. And the Chico City Council had to pass some regulations. And it's sad that they had to pass these regulations, but it's just true. They had to pass regulations that limited the amount that rent could increase, because the amount of housing has become into a crisis, a shortage. And I want to go, well, nobody's going to gouge people for rent because we're all committed to this thing called no, that's not true. And so we want to bring together people that are that are committed to creativity, calling, and common good. And to do that, we're starting a separate organization. And then I have also asked Michelle, and I'm going to ask Michelle to join me up here. I've asked Michelle to be our programming director for that organization. And so I wanted her to introduce herself to you, and so you can hear a little bit of her story and get to know her a little bit. So Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself, give us a quick bio, give us the quick rundown.
Okay, it's pretty short.
Like
my name,
you?
yeah, exactly like me and the life that I've lived thus far. My name is Michelle Marimont. I am 27 years old and pretty new to Nevada, originally from Arizona, where I studied at Arizona State University and got a degree in metalworking. So I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in metalworking. Graduated college with people asking the question, oh, what are you going to do with that? And I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know, but I felt a peace in pursuing that. And from that point on, really just kept the prayer in my heart that, God, give me the next step. Whatever it is, give me the next step. And so that took me on a really interesting journey.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Okay.
So you graduated from college.
Yes.
You have an arts degree.
Yes.
What are you going to do with it? And so what have you been doing since you graduated from college?
So I graduated in 2013 and moved to India in 2014 and lived and worked there for 4 years, essentially, with a few months back in the States between. I was actually working with a vocational center teaching jewelry design to some ladies out of the red light area. But I also was partnering with a small team that started, it was a Live Dead team, so it was affiliated with the Assemblies of God, and they are dedicated to planting churches or bodies of believers where it's currently considered unreached. And so I was part of a team there, and we were based in Calcutta, which is like the third largest metropolitan area in India, and about 18 million people. It's arguably 15, 18, the numbers are.
It's a lot.
The numbers are a lot. The numbers are a lot. But we found that it was a city full of creativity. Really, like the heart of the city was creativity, and they had such a rich literary history. There were musicians, there were dancers, poets. People came alive for art and creativity, and it was something that crossed cultural boundaries. And so we, as a team, actually started a creative arts business, and our goal was to establish community where it wasn't, but also to give people a platform that their messages could be heard further, and that they could connect with an audience that they wouldn't have necessarily had reach otherwise. And so it allowed us open doors, again, where maybe people would never walk into the church or into a small group, but we were able to be part of their lives through art and through creativity.
So if you've ever had a conversation with me and you've ever asked me, like, well, Jake, where's Sot Church headed? You've probably heard me say something like, hey, I want to have an art gallery. Like, one day we're going to have an art gallery. And, it's going to be great. And I want to bring together artists, and I want to integrate art into our gathering. I mean, so you may have heard me talk about that. And in reality, it's in the back of my mind, it's a moonshot. Because I love all those things. I just can't do any of them. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I'm learning to embrace other parts of creativity, I guess. Anyway, and so we've been praying and asking for a long time. God, would you bring a team member, somebody who could help us do this? And in the middle of summer is when we met Michelle, And I was talking with Michelle, and she started talking about all these things that she was doing in India. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to do in Las Vegas. And she mentioned that she's a part of a Live Dead team. We, of course, are a partner with a Live Dead team in the Forgotten Islands. And so there seemed to be so many connections. And I really thought, God, you might have answered this prayer. There might be something going on here. And so we had a few more conversations, and Michelle agreed. She said, all right, I'll jump off a cliff. I'll take this moonshot with you. And so she's been working for the past few weeks. She's doing it in such a way that she's actually going to raise her own salary. And so she will be fundraising from her own network and contacts. We will support her as a church, but she's doing that so that she can be a part of building something here. And then she'll begin to work on that. And so we've already taken some of those steps. But Michelle, why don't you tell us, why is creativity and art important?
I would say that I grew up, I guess, always identifying myself as creative. I'm from a very creative family. Music has been a big part of our lives, whether it's my mom playing the piano and leading worship at church, us all singing along, to choir, to different things. My sisters and I also do visual art. I also really love to write, and so it's been something that's so natural as an extension of who we are as a family and who I am as an individual. But I did actually go to college with the dream that I would start an art gallery, crazy enough. And so I really pressed in through college to pursue that art dream. And I saw, just in a really real way, that creativity and people who express themselves with art as the medium, it creates a transparency that is really unlike anything else. You can go to a stranger and say, like, what are your deepest desires and dreams and passions? And they're like, who are you? But you can go to an artist and ask them why they do what they do, or ask them what inspired their piece, and they share. And a lot of people create from that place of heart, that place of soul. And so it creates this open space of, like, this is who I am, here it is. And there's also that longing, I think, for acceptance of, like, love it. Like, this is my art, love it. This is who I am, love it. But people are okay to put forth their questions, their pursuits, their dreams, their passions, their hurts, their anxieties, their family problems. It all just comes out. And I think it's so interesting that can be such a space for relationship. And it lends itself so naturally. And I feel personally that how better can we connect with people and with creation than by also pointing to the creator and that inspired heart of creativity.
Yeah. I read a quote from one of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, today, and he said, the prayer that precedes all prayers is, God, let the real me know the real you. And that idea of transparency, it's also the basis of good relationships. Let the real me know the real you. And so bringing people into that, I think art also has the ability to communicate truth in a way that is more meaningful and impactful than sometimes speaking the same truth out loud. I'm excited to see what happens because of that. And I'm not, look, you might be going, I'm not an artist. Well, I'm not an artist either. I enjoy art. I don't make art. But I want us to see us embrace creativity in our lives. And so we'll be putting together programming, classes, events to help us embrace creativity in our lives. What happens when you begin to embrace creativity is you begin to see things with different perspectives, and that's when you start to have breakthrough. And so along with not only us creating this idea of creativity, we also want to begin to gather together a community and be a part of our community here in the Arts District. So what has the impact of community been in your life?
I think my revelation of, I guess, what community would be really happened in college. I was part of Chi Alpha, which is the Assemblies of God campus ministry for secular campuses. And they would always say in Chi Alpha, like, once you're in Chi Alpha and you're in this community, you're wrecked for community anywhere else. And graduating, I mean, you kind of get smacked in the face of, like, wow, It's so true. I mean, we create such tight boundaries around our lives in a lot of aspects of like, you're my work people, you're my family, you're my friends. I'll see you when I want to and where I want to, and I'll give of myself to the extent that I'm comfortable and no more. But I think authentic community it maintains that transparency, it maintains the availability, and it gives of oneself. And so I think that through community, I encountered that pursuit of, okay, this is the time and the place for me to encounter Jesus and relationship with Jesus for myself, not for what my parents believe or what I grew up, in church hearing, but my own identification, and then walking forward with people who are also in pursuit. And I think community in India, it was so interesting again to see individuals from all over say, hey, this is me, this is my journey, and us to say, okay, let's journey together, like, come on, let's do this thing. And people to rise up and be able to, again, reach further because we could climb on each other's shoulders, Yeah. And so I think that, again, like, here we've had discussions about what does Vegas need, what does downtown need, what are some of the issues, and we just see, not only here, but I think in the nation, we see isolation, we see hopelessness, we see despair, we see lack of motivation or encouragement, and we need people to be able to bind together and say, like, hey, let's do this, we can go further together.
Because nobody moonshots alone. And whether you're a part of Sot Church or just going through life, I believe there's a moonshot for you, and community has to do that. And so thank you, Michelle. You can get to know her more and more as she hangs out a bit. You'll hear us talking more about it. The next steps for that are us completing our legal paperwork, and then Michelle will begin fundraising. And beginning in the next year, we'll have a couple of pop-up events, and we'll be getting to put things together to focus on creativity, calling, and common good, not just for our church, but as a center, place for the arts district and community to come together. And so we're really, really excited about that. One of the reasons I'm really excited about it is because I think what it does is it starts to take this idea of taking moonshots and God among them and put that into a more physical space than we ever have had before. And so, back to our story real quickly. God says, if we're going to do this, I'm going to have to dwell among you. And it's really interesting that they build the tabernacle, but the tabernacle ended up being a kind of temporary space. Eventually they build a temple, and that lasted for a little bit, but it never fulfilled what God wanted to see happen in the earth. And so God immediately begins to say, I'm going to send Emmanuel, God with us, and he will dwell among you. And that's exactly what Jesus does. Jesus comes, and in just a few weeks, we'll begin focusing on Advent and Christmas, and he comes and he dwells among us. And he lives like us. The Almighty God, clothed in human flesh, giving up the privileges of divinity. Why? To dwell among you. And then eventually he ascends into heaven, but he says before he goes, don't worry. It's better that I go. Why? Well, because I'm literally God in the flesh, and that means only so many people can access my life. But when I leave, I will send the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and then he will dwell among you, and I will pour out my Spirit on all people, on sons and daughters, on old men and young men, on old women and young men, women. All of you will see and prophesy and dream together, and I will anoint you for the good works that I have prepared in advance for you to do, so that my kingdom will come and my will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God, ever since the fall, when you look back at the creation story, what is the central part of the creation story? Is that God walked with them in the cool of the garden. And then there was sin, and all of a sudden that was broken, and God could no longer dwell among them. And so since that moment, God has been doing the work so that He can come and dwell among us. And so when God comes and He's trying to insert yourself into it, God is seeking you. When God's seeking you, He's not seeking you for judgment. He's seeking you to dwell among you. And as people who seek God, as people who call themselves Sought Church, we are committed to dwelling among downtown Las Vegas. And so in the next 4 years, there are going to be some things that are absolute moonshots. If you considered where we're at right now, you took a look around and you thought, how is that ever going to... I don't know how. I don't. That's the beauty of a moonshot. We get to figure it out along the way. I just believe this is what God is calling us to. One of those things is what we've talked about with Good Works Nevada. One of those things will be that we are going to, in the next 4 years, hopefully sooner than later, we will have a permanent space, a permanent location. Why? To have a building? No. Why? To stop doing set up and tear down? Kind of. No. No, not at all. It's so that we can dwell among. So that people recognize that we are here and we're here to stay. We will commit ourselves to that. We will commit ourselves, and we will continue to commit ourselves to dwelling among the forgotten islands on the east side of Africa. I know that you get, kind of updates here and there, but I want you to know that team regularly prays for us and this church. I know because they message me. I message them. They consider themselves a part of this team just as much as they consider us a part of their team. And so we will be committed to seeing God dwell among them. And we're also supremely committed to being generous and having a servant posture to dwell among our community here. And so I was going to do this in announcements, but it just fits in so well. I'm going to ask Virginia to come up. She didn't know that I was going to. But Virginia, would you come up and just tell us about a little bit about Affordable Christmas? Because in just a few weeks, we are going to have an opportunity to dwell among and serve downtown Las Vegas and beyond that. And Virginia's been handling some of those details for us. And so I'm going to have her tell us what's going on.
We are partnering with Current Initiatives for Affordable Christmas, and we are joining with 2 other churches in this area. We would like to minister to 45 families who could not necessarily go into Target or Walmart or Amazon.com and buy their kids Christmas presents. We are going to be raising money, gathering volunteers, gathering donation of toys, and bringing them all together at the, is it 9th Street Bridge? 9th Bridge School. And these families are going to be invited to come in and pay pennies on the dollar for toys for their kids, for Christmas gifts. It's going to be really cool. Anything that costs between, I think it's like $1 and $20 would be $1 for that family. Any gifts that cost between $20 and $30 will be $5 and, $10. And the most expensive gift will be, I think, $40. And that would be like an iPad. And we're looking to minister to 45 families. I know we already have, how many did I tell you? 17? Something like 17 families already signed up, and that represents 52 children. So you can imagine how many kids 45 families will look like. We have reached out, Sought Church has reached out to Teen Challenge, and we believe that we're going to get some families from Teen Challenge that we're going to nominate to participate. But what we need from you is we need a couple things. You can volunteer to actually put boots on the ground and spend time ministering to these families on the day, on Saturday, December 15th. We'll be setting up around 8 o'clock, probably be all done by 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to feed them a hot meal. We're going to minister just love and encouragement to them and point them to the hope that Christmas is all about, Jesus. You can give funds or donate toys. There's a list over there of toys. If you're in the store shopping, throw a Barbie in your cart, throw a Matchbox set in your cart, a Lego set, whatever. It's easy to do. And really, how many of us impulse buy and throw extra stuff in our cart? I know the Marmonts do, because we always get at checkout, and there's extra stuff in our cart, and I know who's put it there. One of those guys. One of those guys, or me. I impulse buy too. You can help with fundraising. I know Monique is helping reach out to area merchants to say, hey, can you donate cash or a gift card or a bike or something to this? And there's some fundraising information there. The other thing you can do is you can nominate families. If you know of a family who is in need, that we can get on the list. There's an application over there that we just need the families to fill out. SOT Church is working to get our families together, but we would love to be a part of reaching out with the love of Jesus to this community this Christmas.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Virginia's been handling the details and on the phone calls for that over the past couple of weeks, and she's putting that together, and thank you so much. You'll get to meet John also. So they've taken on new leadership roles as we are taking on MoonShots together. So what we would love from you is we would love for you to give us a Saturday morning on December 15th, if you could. Just that would be amazing. If you're a shopper, man, it's Black Friday. If you guys do the Black Friday thing, grab a couple toys for us. Be a part of us dwelling among downtown Las Vegas. And what we hope and pray is that as we dwell among downtown Las Vegas, they will see a God who dwells among them. And so we want to serve together. And I would encourage you to do this. There are several ways that I think that the reach could go beyond this room right here, which is this. I would encourage you, for some of you, you're connected with organizations or businesses who like to give to charitable things every once in a while. And we've got all of the paperwork. It's not to SOT Church. It's to this other organization, Current Initiatives. They're not a religious, they're a nonprofit, but they're not a religious nonprofit. And so there's no, I know there's some policies regarding that in certain organizations. They don't have that problem. We're just serving with them. And so if you have an organization that you go, man, they could give $100, $500, $1,000, that would be awesome. Help us out by getting us connected with that, and we can help you make that ask. We can give you the paperwork. We can do that. The other thing that I would love to see for the reach to go beyond this room is one of the ways that you can really have a lot of fun with your friends who don't go to church and get them to kind of get introduced to your church friends. Because we know that sometimes your friends and your church friends don't mix together. One of the ways that you could do this is by serving together. And just say, hey, I'm doing this. I'm volunteering to help kids get Christmas gifts. Would you do that with me? And I think that's an easy ask. That's an easy way to build that friendship together, to kind of break some of that ice there, and to see more and more people involved with serving downtown. And so we would love for you, not only for you to be there on Saturday, December 15th, but bring a friend with you. Bring someone with you who maybe is doubtful about church, but they don't mind giving Christmas gifts to kids. And that would be a great way to serve together. And so those are some things that we're asking. We are committed in the next 4 years to taking these moonshots so that we can dwell among downtown Las Vegas, so that they will see the God who dwells among them, who seeks them. So that you and I will seek God together and not only take moonshots as a church, but we'll cheer you on for the moonshot that's in your life. And see God meet your needs, more than meet your needs, be with you. And I believe that just as there were some unintended consequences in the NASA program, some inventions, some breakthroughs, that as we commit ourselves to this, there will be some unintended consequences of God working in us.